A few years ago, there was an article in the mainstream media asking whether or not California is a failed state. They are facing a series of major emergencies, including homelessness, drug abuse, just general dumps and filth in major urban areas. The state has some serious problems. And of course, conservatives say it's failed liberal policies that are pushing this. Certainly, there are many people who agree outside of the political space, including police officers and many people who deal with literal policy and are looking at what's going on. You can see that the state has a Democratic, for the most part, supermajority in many areas, resulting in stagnation. That was actually the opinion of a New York Times progressive. We now see a California exodus. More people moving out of the state than for the first time since 2010. People are leaving the state. It is riddled with problems. And that brings me to today's lead. Michael Bloomberg sees California as model on climate change and guns. His plan? Export it. It may be the most insane thing I have ever heard. California has so many problems. The last thing we want to do is take those policies and expand them to the rest of the country. But it seems Michael Bloomberg does. Now, let me stop you. You may be saying, oh, Bloomberg, who cares? I don't care about Bloomberg. He's nobody. He's in third place. Did you know that? Did you know that Michael Bloomberg is now in third place? Did you know that he's spent over $100 million? I recently talked to a local near my house, and they said the only ads they see are for Steyer and Bloomberg because they're wealthy, and they're dumping money into ads like crazy. If you think Bloomberg isn't going to win, or that he can't win, you got nothing coming. Bloomberg may become the nominee because he's just got so much money, he's shutting all the other Democrats out. I don't think he can beat Trump. But in the event that he does, whatever, maybe it'll happen, he is going to take the failed policies of California and he's going to expand that and export it to the rest of the country. So I certainly hope you're paying attention. I want to read for you some of the stories. And then I want to show you a new report from Fox News where they have a police lieutenant saying it is the leftist policy, these liberal prosecutors that are causing this problem. And Michael Bloomberg is praising the criminal reforms they've made. So as somebody who's actually worked on the homelessness crisis in California, I want to share with you what I think is going on and how California is making everything worse. Before we get started, you can head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's several different ways you can give, but the best thing you can do, I got a new show coming. The studio is nearing completion. They've finished the basement. I'm waiting for the inspectors. Go to youtube.com/timcastirl for a new show that's going to be coming up the next few weeks. I've got some excellent guests prepared. And there's going to be a lot of segments that are just not the most important news stories in the world. It's going to be more about like ideas and smaller news stories and funny happenings. But I will be dramatically increasing my production. Let's start with what Bloomberg is doing, and we'll come back to the exodus. And I want to talk about the problems California has, like disease, drugs, etc. Michael Bloomberg's plan for California: export it, according to the Star Tribune. They say the Democratic presidential candidate and former New York City mayor likes a lot of what he sees in the Golden State and thinks its efforts on climate change, gun control, and criminal justice reform set a benchmark for other states to emulate. Saying, quote, I think that California can serve as a great example for the rest of this country, he told supporters at the opening of his LA campaign office. Yes, there are problems, including homelessness, struggling public schools, and scarce, costly housing. But California is something the rest of the country looks up to. No, they don't. You're nuts. California has been a leader in an awful lot of things. You know, in the past, I'd say people looked up to California. It was my dream when I was younger to move out to California, and I did, and then I left because I was like, that was all a lie. California loves pushing this narrative of Hollywood dreams because they want you to come there and give up your money, but you'll never be a star. You'll never be wealthy or famous. The last place you want to go is California. It is a mess, and I learned that firsthand. But more importantly, as I showed you, I opened this video by explaining people are leaving California in large numbers. They have some of the worst net domestic migration than many other states. Now, they do see a small growth. For sure, they're not in decline like many other states are, but they do have massive migration out of the state, which says to me people are not really looking up to California anymore for the most part. I mean, it's an opinion. Maybe there's some data showing it could be the case. But I think you got to be nuts to look at all of the problems that California is facing. Let me tell you something. You know how your city has like a fire department, a police department, you know, you see ambulances. Yeah, you've got public services, right? That makes sense. What if I told you that in San Francisco, one of the public services was to clean up human waste off of the streets, called the Poop Patrol? I'm not kidding. Could you imagine if your town had to pay for a poop department? That's what San Francisco has, and apparently they need to expand it. That's how bad things are getting. So when Bloomberg says criminal justice reform, oh, let me tell you, Fox News has a new report where they actually talk to the police about what's causing these problems. And what do they say? Liberal prosecutors. You see, here's what happens when you have one party control. In California, for the most part, it's blue across the board. A lot of these cities have, they're basically Democratic supermajorities. So no one has to compete because no matter what happens, Democrat wins. And that means there's no market competition in the political space. No one has to fulfill any promises. Nobody cares. No competition. Let's read a little bit more. Bloomberg says, yes, there's these problems. His comments marked a sharp departure from views of Donald Trump, whose administration has been in a long-running feud with the nation's most populous state over issues from environmental protection to homelessness. Trump called California a disgrace last year, shortly after its Democratic-controlled legislature passed a bill that would have required presidential candidates to release their tax returns to get on the 2020 ballot, a proposal aimed squarely at the president. It was later voided in court. They say Bloomberg's visit came as part of a swing through a state that he sees as central to his hopes of winning the White House. After a late entry into the race, Bloomberg is bypassing the first 4 primary and caucus states and is anchoring his strategy to California and other Super Tuesday states on March 3rd. His TV ads have been appearing routinely on television, attempting to connect with voters who might know little or nothing about the billionaire businessman. The political moderate argued that Trump has divided Americans while he can unite them, and that as Washington languishes in gridlock, he has a record of accomplishment as mayor. Among the crowd was LA investor Mike Connolly, who said he feared the Democratic Party was drifting too far to the political left and was drawn to Bloomberg's fiscally conservative, socially liberal blueprint. And importantly, he believes Bloomberg can defeat Trump. He's got the right policies for most Americans on critical issues like gun violence and climate change, said Connolly, an independent who voted for Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. Let me tell you something. Right now, what does it mean to be fiscally conservative? It basically means you don't want far left policies. I can respect that. But what does it mean to be socially liberal? Michael Bloomberg likely is not. I mean, I guess if he's praising California, he probably is. So am I super concerned about the far left in terms of them wanting socialism? A bit, yes. Am I concerned about the far left cultural issues like letting people roam the streets, doing really gross and awful things, and then not solving those problems? I'm also concerned with that, yes. And Bloomberg is no better. Sure, he's a moderate on financial policy, but not on cultural issues. And that brings me to, well, let me start with this, the threat of Michael Bloomberg. Do not dismiss this man outright. Michael Bloomberg has spent a staggering $100 million on campaign ads in a month. You know what? Most people don't care about the guy. They really do not care. And I feel like, you know, you're underestimating this extremely wealthy man who is shutting out all the other candidates. He doesn't have the same base, the same viral push, but he can manipulate the passive Democratic voters. And now we see this. Bloomberg surges into third place tie from January 4th. Yeah, a guy you probably didn't care about and didn't think was going anywhere is now tied for third place, according to Hill Harris X. They say this. His 6-point surge to 11% ties him with Elizabeth Warren. And it comes amid nearly doubling the ad spending of his next closest candidate at $155.3 million. Former Vice President Joe Biden still holds a commanding lead at 28%, so Bloomberg's probably not going to win. I don't know. They say his rise coincided with a 4-point fall for Pete Buttigieg. But the dude has clearly spiked, and it's because he's got the money to do it. But now let me show you this story. Let's talk about his plan for exporting California. Fox News has the report. San Francisco police lieutenant, liberal prosecutors responsible for chaos disorder on city streets. They basically say in a new report at Tucker Carlson's, I don't know if it's like, say he's working on it, but, you know, Fox News, showing that they no longer arrest people. Everything's just a warning or a citation. So there's no more concern. There was a story a while ago that I read on my second channel that in San Francisco, if you steal or damage something under $950, they don't do anything about it. So people know they can go into stores, look at the price and say $800, take it, you're never going to get in trouble. So what's happened? People have been incentivized to actually start committing these crimes. It's kind of funny because it's the reverse of broken windows policy. You know, Michael Bloomberg has apologized for stop and frisk, saying, oh, it was a mistake, right? Stop and frisk was this policy in New York where they stopped and frisked random people and they tried to find, contraband. It was widely panned and criticized by the left as being racist. Well, this was a part of what's called broken window policing. This is an idea that goes back, I think, to the 80s. The idea is this: if there's a building with one broken window, then most people won't care if another window breaks because the building is cruddy. It's similar to litter. If you're in a room or you're out in the street, you see litter on the ground, you're more likely to litter. So the idea was, if we could shut down the lightest level of crime, all other crimes would start to evaporate. If you get strict on jaywalking, you'll see less muggings. That's the general idea. Now we're seeing San Francisco kind of do the opposite. Now, this is not me defending broken windows because as far as I know, it didn't work. But I will tell you this. If you start telling people we won't punish any crimes at a certain level, then don't be surprised when those crimes start spiking. And don't be surprised when the police blame you. Could you imagine if this was exported nationwide? Is this the criminal justice reform that Michael Bloomberg thinks we need in the United States? I certainly hope not. Fox News says, Police Lieutenant Tracy McRae says the city's left-wing prosecutors are to blame for rising crime and disorder. They make the decision whether criminal cases will get charged or not, and most of the time it's like, nope, not charged, nope, not charged, McRae said during an exclusive interview with Tucker Carlson tonight. According to the FBI, San Francisco has the highest per capita rate of property crimes among America's 20 most populous cities. Violent crime in the city's mass transit system has more than doubled between 2014 and 2018, according to a tracker published by the San Francisco Chronicle. An average of 66 smash and grab car thefts were reported each day in December. Many more go unreported. Quote, our car windows got busted, McRae said. I didn't bother making a report. Just ask anybody, you know it, we feel it. Crime is really out of control, says City Journal contributor Erica Sandberg, who lives in San Francisco and has reported extensively on the city's deteriorating street conditions. Whether it's property crime or even violent crime, it's scary. This is the criminal reform that Michael Bloomberg thinks is a good idea. So let me explain something to you as someone who's worked on these homelessness issues and has worked with activists. They have this mentality that, for one, let me point out the correct position that leftists actually have. They say if someone's sleeping on the street, they can't be arrested for that. They can be told to move, but so long as they're not blocking the street, they're allowed to be there. That's correct. This is liberty. I'm sorry. You can't arrest someone for just sleeping on the sidewalk if they're not obstructing it. But the left also has this view that every single person who is downtrodden is simply a victim of some kind of oppression. And so when it comes to actually arresting and charging people, they say err on the side of, let's recognize their victimhood status. Oh, these poor homeless people. Many of these homeless people are in fact poor homeless people. Like, we really want to help them. I know, I worked on this. And I'm really angry with California for not doing right by some of these refugees who have lost their homes due to wildfires. I think we can do a better job. The problem is they're just placating their voter base by saying, look how much I care. It is unfair that these victims be arrested and jailed. It makes their lives harder. Therefore, we're no longer going to prosecute anybody who's publicly doing drugs or, stealing things under a certain amount of money. To me, that's insane. I think what we need are laws, but we need human, implementation of these laws. The problem isn't that we're jailing people who are committing, nonviolent offenses for the most part. And what I mean by that is these people who are, doing wasteful business, like doing their stuff in the middle of the street. Yes, you arrest them, okay? You don't destroy their lives. You say you can't do this. It's illegal. The people who are doing drugs in public, you say you can't do this. The people who are stealing things under $1,000, you say you can't do this. You arrest them. But the issue is sometimes people are victims. Sometimes people are downtrodden. And then it's the decision of the arresting officers to determine whether or not they're going to now let them, stay in a jail cell until a court date, or to say this particular individual is one of these cases. What's happening is these prosecutors are taking a more left-wing approach, likely, in my opinion, because they're scared of being accused of being bigots or something by the overly progressive place they live. In which case, you get people saying, I want to get reelected as a prosecutor, So I'm not going to prosecute because they will pull up my numbers and accuse me of being, I don't know, bigoted or racist. What ends up happening, then the street becomes littered with waste. And then for some reason, people like Bloomberg go, I think it would be a good idea to push this to the rest of the country. Sorry, I happen to think that's a really, really bad idea. This story from the this commentary from the Daily Caller, Tucker Carlson says in San Francisco, civilization itself is coming apart. And I've certainly talked about the problems California is facing. But what do you think California is going to do about it? Do you think they're going to, I don't know, actually start recognizing you do need sometimes to arrest these people who are doing their business in the streets and who are committing crimes? No, they're going to push a Green New Deal. This is what Michael Bloomberg thinks the rest of the country should have. California Democrats want their own Green New Deal to fight homelessness and climate change. They've created the problem by refusing to prosecute the low-tier crime, refusing to arrest people. And again, I understand some people are in dire straits and need mental health, checkups and support. Some people just don't care and want to commit crimes. Now, instead of recognizing their faults, what do they say? We couldn't solve the problem. They say, look at this big problem affecting us. Here's the solution. Major government overhaul, a Green New Deal. And what do they say? For equity. That's what they say they're fighting for. Let me read. Under the banner of a so-called California Green New Deal, liberal state lawmakers on Monday unveiled sweeping new goals to reduce homelessness, cut greenhouse gas emissions, and improve living standards in poor communities within 10 years. Their bill does not yet include any specifics about how they want the state to reach those goals or how they'd pay for it. Among other things, the plan aims to hasten the state's compliance with targets that are already in place under California law to wean the state off fossil fuels. Assemblyman Rob Bonta of Alameda said his legislation will grow to become more meaningful as it moves through the legislature. He expects it to include concrete goals that would require Newsom's signature. They say it's ambitious and all this stuff. The name of the plan is modeled after AOC's. They say same name, same pillars addressing climate change as we promote equity. But this is California's Green New Deal, so it's different. Basically, they have this problem created by leftist policy, at least according to the police, and their solution is to go further left and give the government more control. I'm sorry, man. If you were a moderate in 2008, you are no longer whatever this is. Because all they're doing is just pushing forward further and further and further without ever reflecting on what's causing the problems in the first place. At a certain point, you have to recognize that where the left was 10 years ago is not where the left is today. And I've had conversations with people and they say, Tim, when you rag on Democrats, like I'm a Democrat. And I say, okay, how do you feel about California? Oh man, California's got serious problems. Well, that's Democrats, dude. So listen, the way I've been described, the way people describe me is politically homeless. That's it. We're not whatever this is. California is nuts. Michael Bloomberg is supposed to be the moderate, but he wants this policy for the rest of the country. You get out of here, man. You're nuts. Rest assured, California will ban flavored vaping, and they're going to ban a statewide ban on gas-powered gardening equipment. Sure, whatever. But are they going to actually deal with the problems their state is facing? Well, they claim to, but all they're doing is doubling down. And to me, that's absolutely insane. Listen to what your police are saying. You're having people commit crimes and you're telling them, don't worry, you'll be fine. We're not going to charge you with anything. In one of the interviews, they're asked, what if someone does their business in the street? Citation. What if they do drugs? Citation. What if they, have a weapon? Seriously, just a citation. Like, stop asking. Here's the thing. When a homeless person or a broke person commits a crime and you give them a citation, they laugh because they can't pay it anyway. So California continually thinks that everyone is a victim of oppression, and they push this equity narrative, and their response to the growing crisis, which is their fault because they can't pass actual housing bills for the life of them, they say, you know what? We need a Green New Deal. Guaranteed state jobs, health care for non-citizens. We're not going to deal with the homeless crisis. We're just going to implement a Green New Deal. So the problem is created because of their policies. So they enact even more insane policies to carry on. You know what, man? During the drought, several years ago, there were places in between LA and San Diego where they were told they couldn't water their lawns, so they were freaking out. Like, how dare you tell me I can't water my lawn? Across the street from a town called East Porterville, where they had no more groundwater, a golf course with sprinklers on. Could you imagine living in your home and across the street is a bunch of, I don't want to say super wealthy, but wealthier individuals watering their golf course and your well has gone dry? That's what California is. It's a dystopian nightmare. And if Bloomberg actually starts taking over the Democratic Party, as he's gaining more and more traction and his polls are going up and he's buying more and more ads, dismiss him all you want. But his plan is to make California the rest of the country. Now, I'll tell you this. He could be pandering. You know, for all the fear and like, oh no, California's a nightmare and Bloomberg's going to destroy the country, he's probably just telling California what they want to hear. All right. Let me give you a couple more as we leave. And this one's more of a joke. California's problems, they can't even deal with chicken. Look at this. Even chickens have diseases. New wave of chicken-killing Newcastle disease hits SoCal. Even the chickens are sick. And even the oranges are sick. I know, these things happen. I'm not blaming California for this. You can't say some of the policies they enact result in chicken sickness or whatever. No, this is more of a joke. But the point is, I find it rather shocking that anybody would look to California at this point and say, go for it. Because several years ago, it was mainstream leftists saying California was a failed state. I'm not exaggerating. It was like the Daily Beast. California is a failed state. And today, Bloomberg, let's make the rest of the country like California. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Dismiss Bloomberg, fine. But at the end of the day, he's the one buying hundreds of millions of dollars in ads. Put $100 million this past month. He'll put $100 million more. And his message about California being great is going to be spread around, and people are they're gonna hear it. They're not going to hear a counterpoint because other Democrats are being shut out. There's Donald Trump, though. He's the other side saying California's a mess. So I'll leave it there. I don't know if anybody cares about California, but I thought this one was rather interesting because I couldn't believe that anybody, Democrat or otherwise, would actually say California is the role model for the country. I assumed even Democrats would call it out. But stick around. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. YouTube.com/TimCastNews. It is a different channel, and I will see you all there.